The Silvermark Precision Range rose from the Utah desert like a steel cathedral, its polished firing lanes stretching 300 meters under a sky so blue it burned your eyes. This wasn't just any shooting range. It was the proving ground for America's elite. Senators with private jets, generals with classified clearances, and defense contractors who bankrolled wars all came here to play their games of power and precision. Maya Roberts stepped out of her rusted Honda Civic, her worn canvas sneakers, crunching on the pristine gravel. At 25, she moved with quiet purpose, her faded gray hoodie and frayed jeans a stark contrast to the tactical gear and tailored jackets surrounding her. She carried a battered cloth bag over her shoulder, its contents clinking softly with each step. The Desert Wind Championship was invitation only, drawing the world's best marksmen for a week of competition that would crown America's finest shooter. Olympic medalists mingled with retired Marine snipers, their conversations laced with condescension and bourbon-soaked arrogance. They weren't here for upsets, they were here to crown their king, and their king was already here. Noah Kellerman stood at the range's edge, his black tactical gear pristine, his blue eyes cold as winter morning. At 38, he was Silvermark's undisputed legend. His record, 10 consecutive bullseyes at 300 meters, no scope, had made him a god among mortals. His jaw was set like granite, his posture commanding, but when his gaze fell on Maya, there was only amusement. "Registration's that way, sweetheart," called out Richard Vance, a retired colonel with a silver mustache who served as head judge. His voice carried the kind of authority that expected immediate compliance. "Kitchen staff enters through the back." Maya ignored him, walking steadily toward the competitors' area. She pulled out a weathered M24 rifle from her bag, its forest green paint worn to bare metal, its stock scratched from years of hard use. The weapon looked like a relic from a forgotten war, but Maya held it like an extension of her soul. The whispers started immediately. "Who let the maintenance girl into the VIP section?" Victor Lang, a 50-year-old defense contractor, muttered, while swirling bourbon in a crystal glass. His eyes narrowed as he took in Maya's appearance. "That rifle's older than my grandson." Clara Hensley, an Olympic sharpshooter with a perfect blonde braid and custom gear worth more than most people's cars, leaned toward her teammate. "This is a sniper challenge, not a charity event," she said, loud enough for Maya to hear. "Maybe she's lost." Greg Palmer, a tech mogul wearing a tactical vest with his company logo, clapped sarcastically. "You bringing that antique to sell for scrap? The metal recyclers are probably closed today." Maya's face remained still, her silence a fortress. Inside, her thoughts were steel. They think they know me. That's their first mistake. The mockery grew sharper as Maya approached the registration table. Richard squinted at her through his reading glasses, his silver mustache twitching with barely contained laughter. "You sure you're in the right place, kid? The gift shop's back that way." "I'm here to compete," Maya said simply, her voice steady and clear. The crowd nearby erupted in laughter. Clara polished her rifle's scope with exaggerated care, smirking. "Sorry, honey. Are you here to register, or did someone send you to refill the water coolers?" Greg waved a stack of cash above his head. $50 says she doesn't hit the target." "Once!" The crowd roared its approval. Clara tossed in a $100 bill. "I'll double it if she cries before the first round." Richard, caught up in the moment, added his own wager. "I'll throw in my vintage cigar collection if she even hits the board." A young staffer, pressured by the atmosphere, posted the bets on a whiteboard titled "The Rookie Flop." Maya overheard every word, her fingers pausing on her ammunition box. Her hazel eyes burned with quiet intensity, but her expression never changed. "They're betting on my failure like it's a game," she thought. "Let them. I'll make them eat every dollar." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the range, Maya stood alone among the elite, her chipped M24 resting against her shoulder, her silence louder than their jeers. Tomorrow, the competition would begin, and these people, these powerful, connected, untouchable people, would learn what real precision looked like. She had come here for a reason, carrying more than just an old rifle. She carried a legacy they couldn't even imagine, and a skill that would shatter their world of privilege and presumption. The desert wind whispered through the range, carrying with it the promise of something these people had never seen before, a reckoning. The mandatory equipment inspection was conducted with the precision of a military operation, if that operation was designed to crush someone's spirit. Richard Vance stood behind the inspection table like a judge at a tribunal, his silver mustache gleaming in the morning sun. Beside him, Ellen Montgomery, a former Army logistics officer whose loyalty to Noah ran deeper than blood, waited with barely concealed disdain. Maya approached the table carrying her cloth bag and weathered M24. The crowd had already gathered, their phones ready to capture what they assumed would be her embarrassment. Clara Hensley sat in the front row of the spectator stands, her perfect blonde braid catching the light as she whispered to Greg Palmer. "Equipment inspection," Richard announced unnecessarily, as if Maya couldn't read the large sign above the table. "We need to verify that all firearms meet championship standards." Ellen stepped forward, her inspection exaggerated and theatrical. She hefted Maya's M24 like it might contaminate her hands, muttering loudly enough for the crowd to hear. "This thing's a museum piece. Probably misfires half the time." "The rifle is functional," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite the growing laughter from the stands. "We'll be the judge of that," Ellen replied, deliberately jostling Maya's ammunition box, the hand-loaded rounds scattered across the dirt, their brass casings glinting in the dust like fallen stars. The crowd erupted in delighted laughter. "Careful!" Clara called out mockingly. "Don't break the antique!" Richard checked his watch with theatrical precision. "Rules are rules. 5 minutes for equipment check. Clock started when we began." He made no move to stop the ongoing sabotage as Ellen continued her inspection, taking her time while Maya's ammunition lay scattered in the dirt. Maya knelt in the dust, her jeans streaking with grime as she gathered her rounds. Each cartridge was hand-loaded, crafted with the kind of precision these people couldn't comprehend. As she worked, Ellen whispered to Richard, "She's done before she starts. This is almost too easy." The crowd sensed blood in the water. Greg Palmer raised his phone, filming Maya's humiliation. "This is going straight to social media, just a rookie reality." "Time's up," Richard announced, though Maya was still collecting her ammunition. "Move along. Other competitors are waiting." Maya stood slowly, dust on her knees, her expression unchanged. Inside, her thoughts were ice. "They think they can break me with cheap tricks. They'll learn I'm stronger than they ever imagined." An hour later, the Precision Duel's rules were announced with military formality. 10 shots at 300 meters, no scopes, no wind adjustments after the first shot. The target's bullseye, a dime-sized dot in the distance, was unforgiving as a judge's gavel. Noah Kellerman stepped to the firing line first, his custom Remington 700 gleaming like polished silver. The crowd hushed, cameras zooming in from every angle. He settled into his stance with the fluid grace of a predator, his breathing controlled, his movements economical. 10 shots, 10 dry cracks that split the desert air like thunder. Each bullet found its mark with surgical precision, the digital scoreboard flashing perfect 10s across the board. The crowd exploded into wild cheers, chanting, "Kellerman! Kellerman!" until the sound shook the desert floor. Noah turned toward Maya, his smirk sharp as a blade. "You still want to shoot, sweetheart? Or should someone bring you tissues now?" Fight. Laughter was deafening. Clara clapped her hands like she was at a concert. Greg shouted, "Save us the cleanup, kid!" Victor Lang raised his crystal glass in a toast to Noah's dominance. Maya walked to the firing line, her faded hoodie a quiet rebellion against their polish. She set her chipped M24 on the bench with the same care a sculptor might place a masterpiece. The crowd's noise faded to background static in her mind. Then she did something that turned their mockery into stunned silence. She kicked off her canvas shoes, standing barefoot on the concrete. From her cloth bag she pulled out a piece of black silk, a blindfold. The crowd's murmurs died like a candle in the wind. "Is she serious?" someone whispered. Maya tied the blindfold over her eyes, the knot tight and secure. Her world became darkness, but her other senses sharpened like blades. She could hear the wind flags fluttering, the distant hum of the electronic scoreboard, the collective intake of breath from 300 people who suddenly realized they might be witnessing something unprecedented. The laughter returned, but it was different now, nervous, uncertain. "She thinks this is a circus act," Greg jeered, his phone capturing every moment. Clara snorted. "What's next? Juggling the ammunition." Noah leaned against a post, his arms crossed, laughing softly. "Just don't shoot any spectators, please." But Jack Coulter, a 62-year-old retired Marine with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much, leaned forward in his seat. Something about Maya's stance, her breathing, the way she held her rifle, sent a chill down his spine. "No," he whispered to himself. "It can't be. That style. Only one person, ever." Maya's hands found her rifle like a pianist finding familiar keys. Her fingers traced every scratch, every dent, a map of battles fought and won. The crowd started, a rhythmic chant, "Miss it! Miss it!" Their voices echoed off the desert walls like a war drum. Through it all, Maya remained perfectly still, her inner voice calm as deep water. "Their noise is their fear. I'll silence it with my shots." She breathed in the desert air, feeling the wind's subtle shifts, hearing the stories it told. Then she raised her rifle, and the world held its breath. The first shot cracked like thunder in a silent canyon. The big screen zoomed in on the target 300 meters away. The red dot in the center, the bullseye, had been obliterated. Dead center. Perfect. The crowd's laughter choked in their throats. Phones slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers. Sunglasses slid down shocked faces as 300 people tried to process what they'd just witnessed. Maya lowered her rifle slightly, still blindfolded, her breathing steady as a metronome. She worked the bolt with fluid precision, ejecting the spent brass and chambering another round. The mechanical sound was the only noise in the suddenly silent desert. "Lucky shot," someone whispered, but the words carried no conviction. Maya fired again. The crack split the air with the same devastating finality. The scoreboard updated. 2 for 2. Bullseye. Clara Hensley's perfect composure cracked. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the metal railing of the spectator stands. "This isn't possible," she muttered. "Nobody shoots like that blindfolded." Greg Palmer's phone had stopped recording. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. The tech mogul who'd built his fortune on calculated risks suddenly faced a calculation that made no sense. Shot 3. Maya's stance hadn't wavered by a millimeter. Her body was a statue carved from stone and determination. The bullet found its mark with surgical precision. Bullseye. Jack Coulter rose from his seat, his scarred face pale. The retired Marine's voice carried across the stunned silence. "That rhythm. That stance. I've only seen one person shoot like that." "Who?" Richard Vance demanded, his authority crumbling like sand. "Owen Vale," Jack whispered. "The Phantom." The name hit the crowd like a physical blow. Owen Vale, the legendary Marine. Sniper whose phantom shot had become the stuff of military legend. 10 blindfolded bullseyes at 300 meters. A feat so impossible that most people assumed it was an exaggeration, a war story that had grown in the telling. But Owen Vale had vanished 10 years ago, presumed dead on a classified mission in the Middle East. Maya fired her 4th shot. Bullseye. In the judge's booth, chaos erupted. Richard Vance, his silver mustache twitching with nervous energy, rewatched the footage on his tablet. "This can't be right," he muttered. "Check the equipment. Check the scoreboard." Ellen Montgomery, her clipboard forgotten, stared at the target through binoculars. Her face had gone white as desert bone. "The shots are real," she said in a voice barely above a whisper. "Dead center, everyone." Tom Riley, a younger judge, with access to the range's digital archives, pulled up video files from his laptop. His hands shook as he typed. "I'm comparing this to the archived footage of Owen Vale's phantom shot from 2015. The stance, the breathing pattern, the timing between shots." He looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. It's identical. Shot 5. The crowd had stopped breathing. Maya's rifle spoke with the voice of inevitability, and the scoreboard answered with another perfect 10. Noah Kellerman, the undisputed king of Silvermark, felt something crack inside his chest. His record, his legend, was being dismantled by a girl in a faded hoodie who couldn't even see her target. Sweat beaded on his temples despite the cool desert morning. His inner voice, usually so confident, began to fracture. She's not possible. She can't be doing this. Shot 6. The mechanical precision of Maya's movements was hypnotic. Breathe, aim, fire, reload. Each action flowed into the next like water finding its level. The desert wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Clara Hensley sank into her seat, her Olympic medals suddenly feeling like costume jewelry. Her inner monologue spiraled into disbelief. I've trained my entire life. I've won gold medals, but I couldn't do this with my eyes open. Shot 7. The crowd had become a congregation witnessing a miracle they couldn't understand. Some people began to weep, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of perfect skill in action. Greg Palmer's phone clattered to the ground, forgotten. His wealth, his influence, his carefully constructed image of success. All of it felt meaningless in the face of what he was witnessing. I bet against her, he whispered to no one in particular. I actually bet against this. Shot 8. Maya's breathing remained steady, her world a symphony of sound and instinct. The wind whispered secrets to her, telling her everything she needed to know. The rifle had become an extension of her will, and her will was absolute. Victor Lang, the defense contractor who'd mocked her rifle as scrap metal, found himself gripping his crystal glass so tightly it cracked. The bourbon spilled over his fingers, but he didn't notice. His mind was reeling with implications he couldn't fully grasp. Shot 9. The scoreboard had become a testament to the impossible. 9 perfect shots from a blindfolded shooter using a rifle that looked like it belonged in a museum. The mathematical probability was so small, it might as well have been 0. Richard Vance stumbled out of the judge's booth, his face ashen. Only one person ever mastered that technique, he said, his voice carrying across the silent range. The phantom shot. That's Owen Vale's signature. Maya paused before her final shot, her blindfolded face turning slightly toward the crowd. When she spoke, her voice was clear and calm, cutting through the desert air like a blade. Owen Vale didn't just leave his legacy in textbooks and training manuals. She raised her rifle for the 10th and final time. He left it to his daughter. The words hit the crowd like a physical shockwave. Owen Vale's daughter, the Phantom's child, the legend's heir. Maya fired her final shot, the sound clean and absolute like a bell tolling the end of an era. The scoreboard flashed its verdict. 10 perfect shots, not a millimeter off target. She pulled off the blindfold, her hazel eyes calm and steady, and looked directly at Noah Kellerman. Now it's your turn to try again, she said quietly. If you think you can match a ghost. The silence stretched across the range like a taut wire ready to snap. Maya stood barefoot on the concrete, her hazel eyes reflecting the desert sun as she looked out over the stunned crowd. The M24 rifle hung loose in her hands, no longer a piece of scrap metal, but a weapon that had just rewritten the history of marksmanship. Jack Coulter was the first to move. The scarred Marine veteran rose from his seat and walked slowly toward the firing line. When he reached Maya, he came to attention and offered her a crisp military salute. Tears streamed down his weathered cheeks. I served with your father in Afghanistan, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He saved my unit, twice. He maintained his salute until Maya nodded in acknowledgement. He would be proud. The floodgates opened. Reporters materialized from nowhere. Cameras flashing like strobe lights, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Maya Vale, where have you been for 10 years? How did you learn the phantom shot? Is your father still alive? Maya slung her rifle over her shoulder with the same casual precision she'd shown in loading it. No comment, she said simply, and began walking toward the parking lot. But the crowd wouldn't let her go that easily. Clara Hensley stumbled down from the spectator stands, her perfect composure completely shattered. She caught up to Maya near the registration table, her face streaked with tears that had ruined her carefully applied makeup. "I was wrong," Clara said, her voice breaking. "I mocked you, and you're incredible. You're everything I pretended to be." Maya paused, turning to face the Olympic sharpshooter. For a moment, something soft flickered in her eyes. "You're not a bad shooter, Clara. You're just not your father's daughter." The words weren't cruel, but they landed with devastating accuracy. Clara nodded, understanding that she'd just been given both forgiveness and a truth she needed to hear. Greg Palmer approached next, his expensive tactical vest suddenly looking like a costume. He held out the $100 bill he'd wagered against Maya, his hands shaking. "I owe you an apology. And this?" "Keep your money," Maya said quietly. "Donate it to a youth shooting program. There are kids out there who could use a chance." Noah Kellerman hadn't moved from his position near the firing line. The man who'd been Silvermark's undisputed king for 5 years stared at the scoreboard that showed Maya's perfect score. His custom rifle felt heavy in his hands, no longer a scepter but a reminder of his own limitations. 10 years, he said, loud enough for Maya to hear. 10 years I've held the record here, and you just erased me. Maya stopped walking and turned back. "I didn't come here to erase you, Noah. I came here to remember my father." "Your father's dead," Noah said, the words carrying a desperate edge. "Everyone knows that. The mission in Kandahar Province, 2015. He never came back. My father taught me that sometimes the most important victories happen in silence," Maya replied. "Sometimes the greatest service is the kind no one ever hears about." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Owen Vale might be alive, or he might be dead. But his daughter clearly knew more than she was saying. Richard Vance approached with his clipboard, trying to salvage some semblance of official protocol. "Miss Vale will need to verify your identity for the record, and there are procedures for—" "I'm leaving," Maya said simply. "But the award ceremony, the media interviews, the prize money." Maya's smile was small but genuine. "Give the prize money to the runner-up. I think Mr. Kellerman needs it more than I do." The words were another precision shot, this one aimed at Noah's pride. He flinched as if he'd been physically struck. As Maya walked toward her rusted Honda Civic, the crowd parted like water. Some people whispered prayers. Others took pictures. A few offered their business cards, hoping to become part of whatever legend was being born. Maya ignored them all. Victor Lang, the defense contractor, finally found his voice. "Miss Vale, my company would be very interested in discussing opportunities with someone of your unique talents." Maya paused by her car door, her hand on the handle. "I'm not for sale, Mr. Lang. Neither was my father." "Everyone has a price," Victor said, his corporate instincts taking over. "I could offer you more money than you've ever imagined." Maya's hazel eyes turned cold. "My father turned down your company's offer in 2014. He said you people put profit before patriotism. I see that hasn't changed." Victor's face went pale. "That meeting was classified. How could she possibly know?" "About it?" Maya climbed into her Honda, the engine turning over with a rough cough that sounded almost defiant. As she drove away, leaving a trail of dust in her wake, the crowd remained frozen in place, trying to process what they'd witnessed. Jack Coulter spoke into the silence. "I was there when Owen Vale made his phantom shot. Kandahar Province, 2009. Taliban commander, 800 meters, sandstorm so thick you couldn't see your own hands." He paused, his eyes fixed on Maya's disappearing taillights. "That was the second best shooting I've ever seen." "Second best?" someone asked. Jack nodded toward the scoreboard where Maya's perfect score still glowed like a beacon. "His daughter just proved that legends can be inherited." As the sun set over Silvermark Precision Range, painting the desert sky in shades of gold and crimson, the crowd slowly began to disperse. But none of them would ever forget what they'd witnessed, the day a ghost walked among them, took aim at their arrogance, and never missed. The phantom shot lived on, carried by a woman who'd learned from the best and chosen to honor his memory in the only way that mattered. by being better. 3 weeks after Maya's performance at Silvermark, the shooting world was still reeling. Footage of her blindfolded phantom shot had gone viral, racking up millions of views and spawning countless analysis videos. Military forums buzzed with speculation. Gun manufacturers offered endorsement deals worth millions. News outlets ran daily stories about the mysterious daughter of America's greatest sniper. But Maya Vale had vanished as completely as her father had 10 years ago. At Silvermark, Noah Kellerman sat alone in the VIP lounge, staring at a glass of whiskey he hadn't touched. The range that had once been his kingdom now felt like a mausoleum. Tourists came daily to stand where Maya had shot, taking selfies with the target that still bore her perfect score. His phone buzzed constantly, sponsors pulling contracts, competition organizers offering him participation rather than headliner. Status reporters asking for his thoughts on being dethroned. Each message was another nail in the coffin of his reputation. Rough week? Noah looked up to see Jack Coulter approaching, the older Marine's face showing the kind of weathered concern that came from decades of looking after fellow soldiers. Rough month, Noah admitted. Rough career, apparently. Jack sat down across from him, ordering a beer from the server. "You know, son, I've been thinking about something Maya said, about her father's mission in 2015. "What about it?" "Well, I did some digging through my old contacts. That mission, in Kandahar province, it wasn't what the official report said." Noah leaned forward, his interest piqued despite his depression. "What do you mean?" Jack lowered his voice. "Owen Vale wasn't killed in action. He was part of a deep cover operation that's still classified, the kind where they burn your identity and you disappear forever, the kind where your daughter learns to shoot in the mountains of Afghanistan because that's where you're hiding." The B implications hit Noah like a physical blow. She wasn't just Owen's daughter learning his techniques. She was his student, his partner. "For 10 years, Jack confirmed. "Think about it. A 17-year-old girl doesn't just disappear after her father's death and resurface a decade later with skills that surpass his own. She's been training, fighting, living the life he prepared her for." Meanwhile, in a secure facility in Virginia, government analysts were reaching the same conclusions. Maya's performance had triggered automatic flags in multiple intelligence databases. Her biometric data from the range cameras had been run through every system the military had access to. The results were classified at the highest levels. Agent Rebecca Torres sat in a windowless briefing room, reviewing files that officially didn't exist. Across from her, General Patricia Hawkins waited with the kind of patience that spoke of decades in military intelligence. "The facial recognition confirms it," Torres said, sliding a photograph across the table. "Maya Vale, daughter of Owen Vale." "But here's where it gets interesting." She opened another file. "Starting in 2016, we have unconfirmed reports of a female sniper operating in Syria. Kurdish fighters called her the Silent Angel. Same year, an American woman matching Maya's description was spotted training militia groups in the mountains of Afghanistan." General Hawkins studied the reports. "And in 2018, Libya. A precision shooter took out 3 high-value terrorist targets from impossible distances. Local sources described her as a ghost with a rifle." The shooting patterns match Owen Vale's style perfectly. "What about 2019 through 2024? Torres spread out a map marked with red pins. "Confirmed sightings in Yemen, Iraq, Somalia, and Myanmar, always in conflict zones, always helping the good guys, and always disappearing before anyone could get close." General Hawkins leaned back in her chair. "So Maya Vale spent 10 years becoming what her father never had the chance to be, a legend operating in complete shadow. The question is, why surface now? Why reveal herself at a civilian shooting competition?" Torres had been wondering the same thing. Maybe she's sending a message to us, to our enemies, to anyone who thinks the Vale legacy died with Owen. Or maybe, the general said quietly, she's preparing for something bigger. Back at Silvermark, the media circus continued. Clara Hensley had announced her retirement from competitive shooting, dedicating herself instead to coaching underprivileged youth. In her statement, she cited Maya's example as inspiration to find more meaningful ways to use my skills. Greg Palmer's tech company had suffered a 15% stock drop after footage of his mockery went viral. Corporate sponsors distanced themselves from the man who'd bet against America's most skilled shooter. His board was quietly discussing his removal as CEO, but it was Richard Vance who faced the most serious consequences. A military investigation had been opened into his handling of the equipment inspection, specifically Ellen Montgomery's deliberate sabotage of Maya's ammunition. The preliminary report suggested a pattern of favoritism and corruption that went back years. 27 years I've judged competitions, Richard told his lawyer over the phone. 27 years, and it's all going to end because of one girl with a beat-up rifle. His lawyer's response was blunt. Your problem isn't the girl, Richard. Your problem is that you forgot what honor looks like. As the investigation deepened, more uncomfortable truths emerged. Victor Lang's defense company had been paying unofficial consulting fees to several Silvermark officials, including Richard and Ellen. The arrangement ensured that certain competitors, those who might later become military contractors, received favorable treatment. Maya's precision shooting had done more than break records. It had exposed a web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of the military-industrial complex. In her small Montana cabin, Maya sat cleaning her M24 rifle with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. The phone rang constantly, reporters, agents, corporations, but she never answered. The mail brought contracts worth millions, but she never opened them. Instead, she opened a different kind of letter. Handwritten on simple paper with no return address. Proud of you, mountain girl. Time to come home. Oh, Maya smiled, the first genuine smile she'd shown in years. Her father was alive, and he'd been watching. The phantom shot at Silvermark hadn't been a goodbye to her past, it had been an invitation to her future. Outside her window, the Montana mountains stood silent and eternal, keeping their secrets like good soldiers. But Maya knew those secrets were about to change. The world had seen what the daughter of Owen Vale could do. Soon, they'd learn what the father and daughter together were capable of. The package arrived at Maya's cabin on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who seemed to know exactly where to find her despite the lack of road signs or GPS coordinates. Inside was a phone, the kind that came with encryption and the ability to disappear digital footprints. It rang exactly once. "Hello, mountain girl," came a voice she hadn't heard in 10 years but would recognize in her sleep. "Hello, Dad," Maya said, settling into the wooden chair by her window. Outside, the Montana peaks stretched toward a sky so blue it hurt to look at. "I saw Silvermark on the news," Owen Vale said, and she could hear the pride in his voice. 10 shots, blindfolded, I taught you well." "You taught me everything," Maya replied, including when to make a statement. "And now?" Maya looked at the stack of unopened contracts on her kitchen table, the constant stream of voicemails from reporters and government officials. "Now I think it's time the world learned that Owen Vale never really died." The silence stretched between them, filled with 10 years of separation and shared understanding. Finally, Owen spoke. "There's a situation developing, the kind that requires both of us. Tell me." A group of former military contractors, Lang's people among them, have been selling advanced weapons to terrorist organizations. They're using their connections to cover their tracks, manipulating competitions like Silvermark to identify and recruit skilled shooters for their operations. Maya's grip tightened on the phone. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to gather evidence, not long enough to stop them." Owen's voice carried the weight of exhaustion. "They've got protection at the highest levels. Politicians, generals, judges, people who've been playing this game longer than you've been alive." "What do you need from me?" "I need the ghost of Owen Vale to stay dead a little longer," he said, "but I need his daughter to become very, very visible." 2,000 miles away, Victor Lang sat in his corner office overlooking downtown D.C., watching news coverage of Maya's Silvermark performance for the 100th time. His fingers drummed against his mahogany desk, a nervous habit that had developed. "Over the past month, sir?" His assistant knocked on the door. "The call you've been expecting." Victor picked up his secure line. "Tell me you have good news." Depends on your definition of good news, came the reply. The voice belonged to Marcus Webb, a former Navy SEAL who now handled Victor's more delicate operations. I've been tracking the Veil girl for 3 weeks. She's careful, but not invisible. Where? Is she? Montana. Middle of nowhere. Living alone in a cabin that's not connected to any grid I can find. Marcus paused. But here's the thing. She's not hiding. She's waiting. Victor's jaw tightened. Waiting for what? That's what worries me. A shooter with her skills doesn't surface just to win a competition. She's planning something. Then, we plan something first, Victor said. I want her neutralized before she becomes a bigger problem. Sir, with respect, you might want to reconsider. If Owen Vale's daughter disappears right after her big debut, every intelligence agency in the world is going to start asking questions. Questions that might lead back to our operations. Victor considered this. His weapons trafficking network had taken 15 years to build. It generated over $200 million annually and provided arms to 12 different conflict zones. One woman with a rifle, no matter how skilled, couldn't be allowed to threaten that empire. What do you recommend? He asked. Let me bring in a team. We stage it as an accident. Hunting mishap, maybe a gas leak. Clean and simple. Do it, Victor said. But make it look natural. The last thing we need is to turn her into a martyr. What Victor didn't know was that his secure line wasn't as secure as he believed. In a van parked 3 blocks from his building, FBI agent Rebecca Torres and her team had been monitoring his communications for weeks. Maya's performance at Silvermark hadn't just embarrassed corrupt officials, it had provided the perfect cover for a federal investigation that had been stalled for years. Did you get that? Torres asked her communications specialist. Every word. Victor Lang just ordered the assassination of Maya Vale. Torres smiled grimly. Perfect. Now we have him on. Conspiracy to commit murder. Issue the warrants. But the web was more complex than even the FBI realized. In a secure facility in Nevada, General Patricia Hawkins was reading classified reports that painted a very different picture of the situation. Ma'am, her aide said, entering with a file marked with red classifications. We've intercepted communications between Owen Vale and his daughter. He's not dead, and they're working together. General Hawkins looked up from her desk. Working together on what? From what we can piece together, they've been building a case against Victor Lang's weapons trafficking network for years. Owen's been gathering intelligence from the inside, while Maya developed her skills in actual combat zones. And Silvermark? Was their coming-out party. Maya didn't just break records. She announced that the Vale family was back in business. General Hawkins closed the file, her mind racing through the implications. Get me a secure line to Agent Torres. If Owen Vale is alive and working with his daughter, this operation just became infinitely more complicated. Back in Montana, Maya was already 3 steps ahead of everyone hunting her. The cabin that appeared to be her home was actually a decoy, complete with heat signatures generated by carefully placed equipment. Her real position was 2 miles north, in a cave system that Owen had prepared years ago as an emergency retreat. She lay prone on a ridge overlooking the decoy cabin, her M24 trained on the access road. Through her scope, she watched a black SUV approach through the forest, moving with the kind of tactical precision that marked professional operators. Her encrypted phone buzzed with a text from Owen. Company coming. 4-man team, Webb leading. Maya's finger found the trigger, but she didn't shoot. Not yet. These men were small fish in a bigger pond, and she needed them alive long enough to lead her to the real target. The team deployed around the cabin with military efficiency. Marcus Webb, a thick-set man with prison tattoos peeking out from his tactical gear, directed 2 men to the back while he and another approached the front door. Maya activated a remote device, and the cabin's lights came on. Through her scope, she watched Webb's team hesitate, confused by signs of recent habitation in what should have been an empty target. "This is wrong," Webb muttered into his radio. "Intel said she was alone and unaware." "Maybe she stepped out?" came the reply from one of his men. Webb shook his head. "Or maybe we're being watched." He was right to be paranoid. Maya had him in her crosshairs from 400 meters away, an easy shot for someone of her caliber. But instead, of pulling the trigger, she activated another device. The cabin exploded. Not a real explosion, a carefully orchestrated light and sound show designed to simulate a gas leak ignition. The flash was visible for miles, the sound echoing off the mountains like thunder. To anyone monitoring from a distance, it would appear that Maya Vale had just died in a tragic accident. Webb's team dove for cover as debris rained down around them. When the smoke cleared, the cabin was genuinely destroyed. Maya had rigged it with enough actual explosives to sell the illusion. "Target eliminated," Webb reported into his radio, though his voice carried uncertainty. "Cabin destroyed. No survivors possible." Maya smiled as she packed up her rifle. Phase 1 was complete. Victor Lang and his network would believe she was dead, giving her the freedom to move against them without detection. More importantly, the FBI would now have Webb and his team on federal charges, conspiracy to commit murder of what would appear to be an innocent civilian. As Webb's team retreated, Maya triggered one final device. Hidden cameras throughout the forest began uploading footage to secure servers controlled by Owen. Every face, every license plate, every piece of tactical gear was now documented and ready to be turned over to federal authorities. But the most important piece of the plan was yet to come. 3 hours later, as news of Maya's death spread through social media and government channels, a different kind of message began circulating through military and intelligence networks. It was a single photograph. Owen Vale, very much alive, standing in front of an American flag. The image was accompanied by a simple message. "My daughter died defending American values. Now it's my turn to fight back." The Phantom was no longer hiding in the shadows. The most dangerous sniper in American history had just declared war on the corruption that had forced him into exile. And unlike his daughter's careful, measured approach, Owen Vale's return would be swift, brutal, and absolute. The first victor. Lang knew of his impending doom was when his head of security called at 3:47 a.m., panic cracking his usually professional voice. "Sir, we have a problem. Marcus Webb's team never checked in after the Montana operation." Victor sat up in his king-size bed, immediately alert. "What do you mean, never checked in?" "Local news is reporting an explosion at a cabin in the mountains. Looks like a gas leak, but there's no sign of Webb or his men. Their vehicles were found abandoned 20 miles away." Victor's blood turned to ice. "And the target?" "Maya Vale appears to be dead, sir." "But—" The security chief's voice trailed off. "But what? Sir, I think you need to see the news." Victor stumbled to his home office, turning on his wall-mounted television. The morning news was running a story that made his hands shake. The headline read, "Legendary sniper Owen Vale alive demands justice for daughter's death." The photograph showed a man Victor had hoped never to see again. Owen Vale, older and more weathered than in his military photos, but unmistakably alive. The accompanying statement was brief, but devastating. "My daughter Maya died yesterday, defending American values against corrupt officials and defense contractors who profit from the deaths of our soldiers. I have spent 10 years gathering evidence of their crimes. Now I will spend whatever time remains to me ensuring they face justice, by any means necessary." Victor's secure phone rang. His hands trembled as he answered. "Mr. Lang?" The voice was calm, measured, and completely unfamiliar. "This is Owen Vale." "You're supposed to be dead," Victor managed. "So was my daughter, until your people murdered her." The words carried no emotion, which somehow made them more terrifying. "I have a proposition for you. I'm listening." "You have 48 hours to turn yourself in to federal authorities and confess to your weapons trafficking operations. You will also provide the names of every government official you've corrupted, every military contract you've manipulated, and every terrorist organization you've armed." Victor's fear was rapidly being replaced by anger. "And if I refuse, then I'll kill you." The line went dead. Victor immediately called an emergency meeting of his inner circle. Within 2 hours, 8 men sat around the conference table in his secure office building. These were the architects of a conspiracy that had generated billions in illegal weapons sales over the past 15 years. "Gentlemen," Victor began, "we have a situation." Senator Bradley Thorne, a man whose re-election campaigns had been funded by Lang Industries for a decade, leaned forward. "Vale's been out of the game for 10 years. What can one man do against all of us? One man with his reputation can do considerable damage, replied General Marcus Stone, a recently retired Pentagon official who'd approved many of Lang's contracts, especially if he has evidence. What kind of evidence could he possibly have? Asked Judge Harold Fletcher, whose court had dismissed several investigations into Lang Industries over the years. Victor pulled up a secure email he'd received an hour earlier. See for yourself. The email contained photographs, documents, and audio recordings, pictures of clandestine meetings between Victor and terrorist financiers, documents showing manipulated bidding processes for military contracts, audio recordings of conversations that implicated half the men in the room. How did he get this? Senator Thorne whispered. The man spent 10 years in the shadows of the world's most dangerous places, General Stone said grimly. He could have been anywhere, recording anything, for a decade. Judge Fletcher's face was pale. This would destroy all of us. Prison for decades, maybe life sentences. Not if we find him first, Victor said. I'm putting together a team, military contractors, private security, bounty hunters, whatever it takes. What they didn't know was that Owen Vale was already closer than they imagined. Across the street from Victor's building, on the roof of a parking garage, Owen lay prone behind his own M24 rifle, the twin to the one Maya had carried. Through his scope, he could see directly into the conference room where his enemies planned their response. He could have ended it all with 8 precise shots, but that would have been Maya's way. Quick, clean, efficient. Owen had something else in mind. His daughter had believed in justice through exposure, letting the system work as it was designed. But the system had failed her, and now the Phantom would show these corrupt men what real fear looked like. Owen's first target wasn't Victor Lang, it was Judge Harold Fletcher. The judge left the building at 7:30 p.m., walking to his armored sedan with 2 bodyguards. He never made it to the car. The first shot took out the streetlight above them, plunging the area into darkness. The second and third shots disabled both bodyguards, non-fatal wounds to their legs that left them alive but immobilized. Judge Fletcher found himself alone, in the darkness, spinning in circles, looking for a threat he couldn't see. Harold Fletcher, Owen's voice echoed from somewhere in the urban canyon of buildings. Amplified by carefully placed speakers, it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. 23 years on the federal bench, 18 dismissed cases that would have exposed Victor Lang's operations. "Who's there?" Fletcher called out, his voice cracking with terror. "You know who I am? The question is, do you know why I'm here?" A single shot cracked through the night, striking the pavement inches from Fletcher's feet. The judge stumbled, falling to his knees. "Your daughter!" Fletcher screamed. "I can help you get justice for your daughter." "My daughter is beyond help," Owen's voice replied. "But your conscience isn't. You have 24 hours to confess your crimes to the FBI. If you don't, I'll assume you value your corruption more than your life." Another shot, this one taking out the windshield of Fletcher's sedan. The message was clear. There was nowhere to hide. Fletcher scrambled to his feet and ran, leaving his wounded bodyguards behind. By the time police arrived, Owen had vanished like smoke, leaving behind only empty shell casings and a terrified judge who would spend the night drafting his confession. The psychological warfare had begun. Over the next 48 hours, Owen systematically hunted each member of Lang's conspiracy. Not to kill them, that would have been too easy, but to show them that he could reach them anywhere, anytime. Senator Thorne found his campaign headquarters surrounded by crime scene tape, after a sniper had shot out every window in the building during a major fundraising event. The shots had been fired from over a mile away through gaps in the city skyline that should have been impossible to navigate. General Stone discovered that someone had infiltrated his heavily secured estate and left Maya's silver-marked target, 10 perfect bullseyes, pinned to his bedroom wall while he slept. One by one, Owen's enemies began to crack under the pressure. Judge Fletcher was the first to break, walking into FBI headquarters with a complete confession and evidence that had been locked in his personal safe. Senator Thorne followed 12 hours later, his political career ending in a flood of tearful admissions on national television. But Victor Lang refused to surrender. Instead, he went to ground in a fortress-like compound in Virginia, surrounded by 30 mercenaries and enough firepower to level a city block. If Owen Vale wanted him, he would have to come and take him. It was exactly what Owen had been hoping for. As the sun set on the third day after Maya's supposed death, Owen Vale prepared for the final confrontation. But he wouldn't be going alone. In a twist that Victor Lang couldn't have anticipated, the ghost of Maya Vale was about to make one last appearance. Because sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to let them have their revenge. The Virginia compound sat like a concrete cancer on 50 acres of pristine forest. Victor Lang had spared no expense turning his corporate retreat into a fortress complete with motion sensors, thermal imaging, and enough armed mercenaries to hold off a small army. He was certain that even Owen Vale couldn't penetrate his defenses. He was wrong. At 11:47 p.m., the compound's perimeter alarms began screaming. Guards rushed to their positions, scanning the tree line through night vision scopes, but they found nothing, just empty forest and shifting shadows. "Thermal's picking up movement, Sector 7, one guard reported into his radio. "I've got motion sensors triggered in Sector 3, came another voice. "Contact Sector 12, single figure, moving fast." But every time they converged on a location, they found nothing. Owen Vale was using the same ghost tactics that had made him legendary in Afghanistan, appearing and disappearing like smoke, always one step ahead of his pursuers. In the compound's command center, Marcus Webb, the same operative who'd failed to kill Maya, watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens. "He's toying with us," he told Victor over the radio, "drawing our men out, learning our positions." "Then end it," Victor snapped. "Flood the forest with spotlights. Bring in the helicopters. I want that ghost dead." What Victor didn't know was that Owen wasn't alone. 200 meters from the compound's eastern wall, Maya Vale lay perfectly still in a camouflaged hide she'd constructed while her father created his distractions. Her M24 rifle was trained on the command center, where she could see Victor pacing behind bulletproof windows. She'd been dead for 3 days, and the illusion had worked perfectly. While the world mourned the loss of Owen Vale's daughter, Maya had used her phantom status to position herself for this final shot. Her encrypted radio crackled with Owen's voice. "Mountain Girl, are you in position?" "Locked and loaded, Dad. Clear shot to the primary target." Remember, this isn't about revenge. It's about justice. Maya's finger rested on the trigger, her breathing steady as a heartbeat. "I know the difference." Inside the command center, Victor was coordinating his men's response when Agent Rebecca Torres's voice came through the building's intercom system. "Victor Lang, this is the FBI. You are surrounded and under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, weapons trafficking, and treason." Victor laughed bitterly. "You have no authority here, Agent Torres. This is private property." "Actually," Torres replied, "we have a federal warrant, and more importantly, we have confessions from Judge Fletcher, Senator Thorne, and General Stone. Your conspiracy is finished." "My lawyers will have me out in 6 months," Victor said, but his voice carried less conviction than his words. "That assumes you live long enough to see a courtroom," came a new voice over the intercom, calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying. Owen Vale had infiltrated the building. Victor spun around, his eyes wide with panic. "Where are you?" "I'm everywhere." "You've never looked," Owen replied. "Behind every shadow you've ignored, in every corner where you thought your money could buy safety." The lights in the command center flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Victor's bodyguards raised their weapons, but they were aiming at ghosts. "Your daughter was a better person than you'll ever be," Victor called out, trying to provoke Owen into making a mistake. "At least she died with honor." The response came not from Owen, but from the compound's external speakers, where Maya's voice carried across the night with crystalline clarity. "Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." Victor's face went white. Through the bulletproof windows he could see muzzle flashes as his perimeter guards engaged targets they couldn't identify. But the shots weren't aimed to kill. They were precision strikes that disabled weapons and shattered night vision equipment. Maya was systematically dismantling his defenses while remaining completely invisible. Impossible, Victor whispered. We saw the cabin explode. We confirmed the kill. You confirmed what we wanted you to confirm, Owen's voice replied from somewhere in the darkness. Did you really think the daughter of Owen Vale would be caught off guard by amateurs? The command center door exploded inward, but instead of Owen Vale, Agent Torres entered with a full FBI tactical team. Behind her came Jack Coulter, the retired Marine who'd served with Owen in Afghanistan. Victor Lang, Torres announced, you're under arrest, but Victor wasn't finished. He pulled a concealed pistol from his desk drawer, aiming it not at the FBI agents, but toward the window, toward where he suspected Maya was hidden. If I'm going down, he snarled, I'm taking Owen Vale's precious daughter with me. The shot never came. Owen emerged from the shadows behind Victor's desk like a specter made flesh. In one fluid motion he disarmed Victor and slammed him to the ground, the pistol clattering across the floor. You should have taken my offer, Owen said quietly, holding Victor in a submission hold that could snap his neck with minimal pressure. 48 hours to confess. You chose pride over survival. Do it, Victor gasped. Me? Prove you're the monster they say you are. Owen looked up at Agent Torres, then at Jack Coulter, finally at the security camera he knew Maya was watching through. I'm not a monster, Victor. I'm a father, and fathers don't kill in front of their daughters unless there's no other choice. Released Victor and stepped back, allowing the FBI agents to make the arrest. Outside, Maya emerged from her hide, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. She hadn't fired a shot during the entire operation. She hadn't needed to. The threat of her presence had been enough to shatter Victor's organization and expose the corruption that had forced her family into exile. As dawn broke over the Virginia forest, Owen and Maya stood together for the first time in 10 years. Father and daughter, legends reunited, watching as federal agents led away the men who'd thought themselves untouchable. It's over, Maya said quietly. This part is, Owen agreed. But there's still work to do. There are always men like Victor Lang, thinking they can buy their way out of justice. Maya nodded, understanding. The phantom shot at Silvermark hadn't been an end. It had been a beginning, a declaration that the Vale family was back, and that corruption would find no safe harbor in the shadows where they hunted. 6 months later, Maya stood before a different kind of target, a classroom full of young soldiers at Fort Benning, Georgia. She'd accepted a position as a marksmanship instructor, teaching the next generation of American snipers not just how to shoot, but when not to shoot. Her students called her Coach Vale, and they hung on every word as she taught them the same lessons Owen had taught her: precision, patience, and the understanding that the greatest victories sometimes came through restraint rather than action. Owen had returned to the shadows, but not as a ghost this time. Working officially with the FBI and military intelligence, he used his unique skills to root out corruption and protect the soldiers who served their country with honor. The statue at Silvermark Precision Range had been updated. Now it showed both Owen and Maya Vale, father and daughter, their rifles lowered in a gesture of peace rather than raised in preparation for war. The inscription read, "In honor of those who serve in silence, fight for justice, and never miss when it matters most." And in a small town in Montana, a new shooting program for at-risk youth opened its doors, funded by anonymous donations and staffed by instructors who taught that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to protect. Maya's final lesson to her students was simple: anyone can learn to hit a target. The real skill is knowing which targets deserve to be hit. The phantom shot lived on, carried by a new generation of warriors who understood that the greatest weapon wasn't the rifle in their hands, but the conscience that guided their aim, and in the desert wind that still whispered through Silvermark's ranges, those who listened carefully could hear the echo of 10 perfect shots, a reminder that legends never truly die, they just pass their gifts to those brave enough to carry them forward. Justice, it turned out, was hereditary. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world. What did you think of Maya's incredible phantom shot? Have you ever witnessed someone being underestimated only to prove everyone wrong? Share your own stories of triumph over adversity in the comments section. Like this video if Maya's journey inspired you, and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest stories of courage, justice, and unexpected heroes. From small-town underdogs to family legacies that refuse to stay buried, we bring you the most compelling real-life tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for being part of our community, and remember, sometimes the quietest voices carry the most powerful messages. The end.